Deck Tech. Today for you I have Krenko Mob Boss. He's from M13. He's a Goblin Legend 3/3. Casting cost is 2 colors, 2 red. And you can basically tap him and double all of the goblins that you have under your control. Alright, so this is Krenko, mono red, mono brown, whatever you want to call it. Let's get him out of the way. We'll start here with a little piece of the deck with the lands. So actually, we can talk a little bit about Krenko. Krenko is a really good deck. Actually, I usually don't play mono red in EDH because red just does nothing well. Like it doesn't have any good creatures. It doesn't have any good tutors. It doesn't have any good draw. It's just really bad at everything. However, Krenko is a really good deck, and there are a couple ways to build it, and I'll talk a little bit about that right now. But let's just get through the lands here real quick. So we got the fetches. We have a couple colorless lands, Ancient Tomb, Wasteland, and Strip Mine. Then we have Forgotten Cave. And we have a bunch of mountains, all kinds of mountains. So what I was going to say is this is a really good budget deck if you are looking to build a budget deck. And there are 36 lands in this deck. And the reason I say it's a budget deck is because you can run 36 mountains if you want, and you wouldn't really affect how this deck plays out. So 36 land, do whatever you want. You can really move in between, I think, 33 to 38. But red does need a lot of land. We'll talk about that right now, I guess. So like I said, red kind of sucks at everything, and it doesn't really have anything going for it. So with red, you have to make sure that you make all of the land drops, and you have enough ramp to push forward the rest of the deck. So it's really important to play enough lands in this deck. You do not want to miss your land drops in mono red, or you're just going to screw yourself. So let's get to some more acceleration. We have Mana Vault, Soul Ring, Mind Stone, Gauntlet of Power, Grim Monolith, Mox Diamond, Solemn, Mana Crypt, Thran Dynamo, Extra Planar Lens, and Ruby Medallion. So those are my mana acceleration spells. It's really, like I said, it's really important that you get these out as soon as possible and you make all of your land drops, or this deck is going to fall apart. So we have to make sure we have all that. And there are really two ways, I think at least 2 ways, but 2 major ways to build Krenko. You can either build him in the style of just really aggressive goblin creatures, as many as you can fit in the deck. You play all these 1/1, 2/2 goblins, or like cards like Goblin Fodder or whatever it is, and then you play Krenko and you try and just make a lot of goblins. I don't like that way of building the deck. I think it's too susceptible to sweepers, and the overall power level of your cards in the deck is going to be lowered because I don't want to play Krenko's Command or cards like Goblin Fodder. I think they're just subpar for EDH, and they might get you a couple wins here and there, but I don't think they're going to do really well. So this deck is more of a kind of mid-rangey combo deck, and I think it's better. It has better functionality for what Krenko wants to do. So it doesn't really focus too much on the combat step. I mean, it can win like seriously very quickly in combat, but I play with a lot of sack outlets plus cards that do passive damage, and I think that's a better way of winning with Krenko. So anyway, we'll start with some goblins. There are only 17 in the deck. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you don't need many. You don't really even need any, actually. With Krenko out, you just need Krenko. And you should have ways of untapping Krenko in the deck or doubling his abilities, and we'll show you some of those that I have in the deck. But you really don't need that many goblins, and it's really not necessary. So playing subpar goblins is not really efficient, and I don't think that if you want to have a successful Krenko deck, you should run that. So anyway, we got Goblin Ringleader, Goblin Lackey, Tuk. Just because he's a goblin, we can fetch him with Goblin Matron. If we have to get rid of a pesky artifact, we can do that. So let's just get to a Goblin Matron real quick. Let me get her out of here. We got Goblin Matron. Let's see. We have the Chieftain to pump all our guys, give our Krenko haste. That's another part of this deck. You want to be able to give Krenko haste. So I've tried to put a couple cards in that do grant him haste, and there are, I don't know how many, but there are a couple. Here's another haste guy, which is the War Chief. We have a combo piece in Skirk Prospector. He's really good. He's really strong. I mean, this is probably Skirk Prospector is probably the best goblin in the deck. It's probably the best goblin in the deck, and that's saying a lot. But he's really, really good. So let's continue on. We got Gem Palm Incinerator just for a little bit of removal. Goblin, I don't know, Shuriken, whatever his name is. He's a regenerator. He's also another sack outlet, which we want. Obviously we have a recruiter. We have Goblin King, Siege Gang Commander. We have Sharpshooter, which is very good as well. Like I said, we do have combos with Sacrifice. So Sharpshooter is one of those combos with cards like Prospector and other cards we have in the deck, and I'll get to those. We have an Arms Dealer. He was a late include, but I think he's really good because we do need some kind of creature removal, and he offers that for us. I'm playing Goblin Welder because I run a lot of artifacts, and he's very good with, what is it? I forgot the name of the card. We'll get to it in a second when I get there. Let's see. Memory Jar, that's what it is. He's very good with Memory Jar, so we'll keep him in the deck. We're going to run Skirk Fire Marshal as one of our win conditions. He's very good as well. And we're also going to play Kiki-Jiki. And those are all of the goblins in the deck. Like I said, I don't run that many. It's really not very important, actually, to run a lot of these because you just don't need them. Like, if you have 2 goblins out on the board and you use Krenko, then you're going to have 6 total. And then next turn, you'll have 12, and then you probably win the game with 12. So whether or not you have 3 or 5, it doesn't really matter. So I don't think it's really that important to run as many as you can. Also, so with that being said, I actually just took this guy out of my deck. I forgot his name. But what he does is, when he comes into play, all goblins get plus 3/0, plus 0. And at the end of the turn, you have to you destroy all of your goblins. So it's cards like this that I don't want to run. I found that with a lot of my playtesting, this guy was he was stuck in my hand. Like, I didn't want to play him. Like, I could play him, but I didn't want to run the risk of either getting fogged, or just something happening where I didn't win on that turn and then I lost my whole board position. So I didn't want to set myself back a turn or two with him. So I actually took him out for a card with more synergy, which is Zealous Conscripts. It's not a goblin, but I think he has a greater functionality in this deck for multiple reasons. I run a lot of sack outlets, so one, I could steal one of their creatures or permanents and sacrifice it. 2, I could bring him in and I can untap a Krenko and get another another activation of Krenko for the turn. I can also go infinite with Kiki-Jiki if I want. I've never done that, and I don't want to do that. But it's a possibility. You can get another activation out of a Goblin Welder or whatever it is. But I think Zealous Conscripts has a lot of synergy in this deck, and for that reason alone, he took the place over a Goblin. So with that, I'm really just saying that Goblins aren't the most important thing in this deck. It's just synergy between all the cards because red really doesn't have any good stuff. Like, I don't really want to play a bunch of lightning bolts, in my deck because they don't do anything when your opponents are at 40 life. So anyway, the non-goblins in this deck, there are 4, right? One is the Zealous Conscripts, yeah. We have Thermopod, which is another one of our sack outlets, just like Skirk Prospector. He's nowhere close to as good, but he has the same abilities. I mean, he costs 5. The power and toughness are irrelevant. Unfortunately he's not a goblin, so that makes him worse. His casting cost makes him worse, but he has the same ability. So he's really good in the deck. We want one of them out in order to not combo off, but to finish off our opponents. And there are a lot of ways to win, and we'll get to the more win conditions later. You saw one with Goblin Sharpshooter, kind of like he can go off and probably kill one guy in a turn. Here's another one of the win conditions that work with our sack outlet. Feature is a Rage Thrower. Rage Thrower is really good. You play him for 6 mana, and if you have 10 guys on board in a sack outlet, you could basically just kill any one of your opponents that you want. Like, you kind of sacrifice a turn for it, but if you wanted to do it then, you could kill any one of your opponents. So Rage Thrower is really, really, really good for that reason, so he's in the deck. And another one is your, what's his name? I forgot his name, Mog, something or other. But he is our Goblin Tutor. So you pay 3, tap him, and you can put any goblin in our hand. And obviously we can use Zealous Conscripts with him as well. So Zealous Conscripts is very good, and I suggest you run him. I was even thinking about running more threaten effects, just because I want to be able to untap Krenko, or if I want to use it as some kind of removal spell. But I decided that, or at least from where I am in my testing, I believe that Zealous Conscripts is enough for that effect, that I don't need any more, especially because it doesn't come along with a body that can be sacrificed. So Zealous Conscripts is the best in his, I guess in his genre, whatever we want him to do. Alright, so let us get to some non-artifacts, just some support stuff that we have in the deck. So we'll start with a really cool Wheel of Fortune. Let's see what we'll go on to here. Let's go with a little bit of removal after Wheel of Fortune. We need the draw, right? Go back to Wheel of Fortune real quick. We need to put as much draw in the deck as possible, and it's got to be kind of okay draw. Like, it can't be just horrible draw. I was thinking of running the red card from M13, where it's 2 red, discard a card, and draw 2. I didn't really like that one, so it didn't make the deck. But Wheel of Fortune is really good because we can dump our hand pretty fast. We are playing Faithless Looting. I think this card is good, so we will use that. There are a couple other ones, and there are artifacts. They're a little slower than the non-artifacts, but they do work just as well. So we need those. Alright, next we have a little bit of removal. I decided to play Rack and Ruin as one of my artifact removal spells, because it is the cheapest one, and it kills 2. So, aside from the Tuk Tuk, we have Rack of Ruin, and we also have a guy from Return to Ravnica. We have Vandablast. Vandablast seems really good. I was running Shattering Spree before Vandablast, and I changed it for Vandablast just because, like, it's not as effective in the first 3 turns, because you can just kill 3 things in the first 3 turns with Shattering Spree. But when turn 5 rolls around, you can Vandablast everybody else's board and keep your artifact safe. So I think that's a high enough upside. And it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't target, so you can't be redirected or anything like that. So Vandablast is pretty good. Let's see what we got. 2 more combo pieces. We have Battle Hymn and Brightstone Ritual. So Battle Hymn is add 1 for any creature, and Brightstone Ritual is add 1 for each goblin you have. And that can just get pretty serious when you make 20 goblins, and then you Brightstone Ritual, and then just, I don't know, do something else that's crazy that just wins the game all of a sudden. Another one that, crazy mana production cards is Mana Echoes. This card is really good. It's probably too good, I think, for the deck. So you make, let's just say you make 5 guys with Krenko, right? 5, that's not too many. You make 5 guys with Krenko. Because they all come into play at the same time, they all see each other at the same time. So each goblin that comes in from a Krenko activation, if you make 5, let's just say, each goblin will get 5 mana. So you get 25 mana total from making 5 guys. It's a little overkill. I don't really have anything to do with it usually, because I can just play out my hand, and a lot of my hand usually is quite intensive in red, so the colorless doesn't do much. But Mana Echoes is still pretty strong, so we'll keep it in. Another one, kind of the combo finishers, is Furnace of Wrath. It doubles all damage, so it's really good with a Sharpshooter or a Rage Thrower or something like that. Another one of the sack outlets is Goblin Bombardment. Obviously, we're going to be sacrificing a lot of our creatures for different functions. We have an Ashnod's Altar, which I haven't gotten to. We have an Altar of Dementia. We have Goblin Bombardment. We have the Regen Goblin. We have 2 mana production ones. We also have damage sacrifice effects with Goblin Bombardment. They're really important. We also have Sylvan Harvest in this deck. Sacrifice a creature, destroy non-basic. I have a little sub-feature of Mana Denial, just because if the deck does come out slow, and that's fine, because I built this to be kind of a control-y mono-red deck. If it does come out slow, then I need cards like the Sylvan Harvest and cards like Stronghold to slow down the game enough to where I can kind of take over the board. And 2 more cards like that are Blood Moon. It doesn't really affect me that much if I do have a Strip Mine or whatever on board. It's, who cares? Or a Wasteland or whatever, it doesn't matter. By the way, there should be a Cavern of Souls in this deck, but I don't have one right now, so I didn't put one in, but it's really not even necessary. Another one of those Mana Denial cards is Ruination. Just to get rid of the non-basics, right? EDH is rampant with non-basics, so I think it's important that we kind of get rid of those and keep our board alive because we only have 2 or 3 non-basics in the deck. So it's kind of important that we do that. Alright, next to our kind of a little pair, I usually don't run them together, but we have Final Fortune and we have a Gamble. Like I said, red does everything horribly, so Gamble you kind of have to play with a full hand or it's just gonna, you're just going to lose the card that you gamble for. So Gamble is tutor any card to your hand and then discard 1 at random, so it's not very good. Final Fortune says take another turn. At the end of next turn, you lose. So I kind of don't like those cards, but whatever it is, you do what you got to do because we have to have them in the deck, so we'll play them. Let's see, we have another haste card, which is Mass Hysteria. I don't play Fervor or any of those. I think I have enough with the Goblins and the Mass Hysteria and a couple other ones that we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I think that's quite enough. We have a Goblin Strike, which is I'm on the fence about, but it's good when we draw a ton of cards, and then we get to Goblin Strike them probably for 20 or 30 or something like that. And if there's a Furnace of Wrath out, they usually just lose. The big daddy of the deck is Vicious Shadows. This works with all of my sacrifice, so you need this card in the deck if you do want to run the like a sacrifice synergy with Krenko, and I think it's a good way to do it. Like I said, I don't like the strategy of just creatures, fast creatures, because playing multiplayer, you're never going to win. Like one-on-one, you might be able to take some wins out, but if your deck really isn't controlish enough for multiplayer, and if it doesn't do enough besides attacking and making a bunch of goblins, then you're just going to lose. And I guarantee you're just going to fall on your face like half the time. So don't do that. Try and build this deck with a little more, love for the game, I guess. All right, let's get to the non-mana ramping artifacts. We'll start with an Altar of Dementia. This was another card previously, but I thought I wanted one more sacrifice outlet. It doesn't really do that much because I don't care about milling my opponents. I mean, I guess it's in like a secondary win condition, but I really have no other synergy in mill besides this card, so it's not that good, but I do want the other sacrifice outlet. There are a lot of turns when I'm wishing that I had a sack outlet on board, and I don't, so I decided to add one more. Obviously, you got to have the Skull Clamp. A couple really good cards with Krenko are Rings. So we can pay 2 and we can double his activation, which is just insane. So that's really, really strong. We have to have that. And then 1,000-Year Elixir gives him haste, and we can pay 1 and we can untap him. And that would work well with a Goblin Welder or other goblins, like Sharpshooter, for instance. So 1,000-Year Elixir is very, very strong in this deck, and I suggest you put it in. Actually, you have to put it in. It's a must. We have Cloudstone Curio. Cloudstone Curio is very good as well. I don't want to go infinite. However, if I do have some kind of haste card on the board, and I have Krenko and I have enough mana, I can activate Krenko, make a bunch of guys, and then bounce Krenko and then recast them, and then continuously do that over for infinite guys if I want. I try to stay away from that, but sometimes you just kind of end up doing it because you have a Vicious Shadows or something like that on board and you want to kill everyone. Anyway, another infinite combo card that I really do not like, and I want to take it out, is Sword of Prunes. Like, if you've watched my videos, you know that I don't like infinite combo because it makes games less fun, it makes games less interactive, and it gives a repetition to the format that I don't think needs to be there. But Sword of Prunes is in the deck now because there are other equipments that I could use for the same thing that like untap the creature, but I don't own them, so I put Sword of Prunes in because it's the only one that I own. So it'll stay in for now until I replace it with another equipment that is not infinite. Anyway, we'll go to a Lightning Greaves. We got a top. Another sack outlet with Ashnod's Altar. Let's see, and that's it for the sack outlets I think on the deck. I have 4 more cards left, and they play a big role. Okay, so we have the last 4, right? And those are Mind's Eye, one of our last draw spells. It's very slow, and I don't recommend it for a lot of other decks. But Krenko and Mono Red, like in specifically, really need the draw. So Mind's Eye makes the cut for us. Next one, same thing with Mind's Eye's Memory Jar. It's also very slow, but we do need the card draw in this deck, or we're not going to win. Like, we can have a really fantastic board position. It's happened to me a couple times now. You have great board position, and then you just keep drawing dead. Like, you draw in, like, you know, a little goblin or something you can't use at that moment. So you really need a lot of effects that allow you to draw cards. So two of our last cards do that for us. The last one that does it actually is Slate of Ancestry, which is probably the best one. Usually on the turn where you do activate it, you win, usually. Because what normally happens is you have 10 or 15 goblins or 20 goblins out. You Slate of Ancestry, and then you draw into like a Brightstone Ritual or a Battle Hymn, and then you all of a sudden have 25 or 20 mana floating, and that's enough to cast either your whole hand or take another turn or do whatever you want. So Slate of Ancestry is a very good card, and you should definitely have it in your deck if you are building Krenko. The last one, if we decide to win with combat, then Coat of Arms is a necessary addition to the deck. Coat of Arms makes it so that we have 15 goblins or 20 goblins out there, and then we can use combat to win the game. So that's really it for Krenko. He's a really fantastic general. I do like this deck a lot. I'm going to keep this deck built for a long time and test it and play it and kind of keep making changes to it because I really do like this deck. But like I said at the beginning of the video, if you are interested in making a budget deck that is competitive and really strong, this is the deck to make. Mono Red does not require you invest a lot in lands. A lot of the cards are very cheap. Its best cards are like Battle Hymn and Brightstone Ritual, and those are 10-cent cards. You could pick up some of its better combo pieces for $2 a piece. The best goblin in the deck is a 10-cent goblin. A $1 chieftain. So really, the deck kind of built itself, and it built itself for very cheap. So if you do want to build a competitive budget deck in EDH, I think this is the deck to do it. Krenko is the deck to do it. So anyway, that's it for Krenko. This is a mid-range mana denial kind of combo deck. So go out there and build this, test it, play it. It's a really fun deck to play. People will actually give you some looks when you pop Krenko down on the board. But it's really fun. So thank you very much. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video.